Are you ready for the Green Party lightning round?
Oh,
I think
yeah.
Maybe, aside from Cam Gordon, I don't know if I've had Green Party candidates on here. I'm trying to put you in uncomfortable positions here. Okay. So just prepare yourself. Who are you supporting for president this year?
We're rolling. We're rolling.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.
Might want to look into getting a sleep study done. I feel like everybody should at some point in their in adult lives.
I'm afraid of what I would find if I had a sleep study done.
What if they find that, you just need a CPAP machine and then suddenly you're like, wow, I can sleep all night,
Yeah, I have a very messed up sleep schedule, and I don't know if I could ever do anything different. And then I would feel guilty if I'm not following doctor's orders to not look at my phone in bed. It would just throw my life into a tailspin if I had to go fix my sleep habits. Better to have a really messed up sleep habit than get it fixed, I say.
That's your health, so I will let you drive that. I know for me, because I've taken a few medications and such that sometimes affect your sleep, and I'm like, if this makes it so that I can't sleep, it's not for me.
Do you feel like you have it down? Do you have a really good sleep schedule?
No.
Oh.
I struggle with chronic fatigue, so I frequently sleep 12 hours or more, and I'm trying to figure out how to limit that, or at least something that's kind of consistent that I can still work with.
What time do you get to sleep at night? Do you have a regular time?
Yeah, I regularly go to sleep at 11. If not, I start to wind down at 10. And left to my own devices, I can easily sleep until noon or 1 or 2.
That's a very responsible and adult bedtime to have. And I'm not going to say what my bedtime can usually end up being.
I respect all different sleep schedules.
I'm a night owl. Let's begin the show. This is the Wedge Live podcast, and I have to apologize to listeners. It's been a while since we've had an episode, and I figure there's a lot of national politics going on, and you can take a month hiatus from me. You don't need the Wedge Live podcast every week, but we're coming back. I'm hoping to get a bunch of candidates lined up, and as our grand reopening of the Wedge Live podcast, we have Toya López, who is running in District 61A. The DFL has a candidate, and the Green Party has a candidate. Welcome to the podcast, Toya López.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
What are you hearing from voters when you talk to them? What are their big frustrations? What are they worried about, stressed about, and want you to address if you get elected?
Yeah, so one thing that I have heard a lot, and I've heard various different takes, grievances, is definitely with our housing crisis, especially with all of our unhoused folks. As I mentioned on the 61A forum, about 60% of unhoused people have jobs, and about 60% of Americans are one paycheck away from homelessness themselves. And yeah, that's really big, and we're feeling it and seeing it a lot in our neighbors. So that's one thing that folks talk a lot about, as well as all of the issues with addiction and fentanyl and other interpersonal violence that's been happening. As in 61A, we did have, unrelated to the housing crisis. So the other issue I've heard is about public safety. We did have the two tragedies, the vehicular assault, which ended up in the death of a young teenage girl, as well as the shooting, which also left young people dead and injured. And I think it was in the same corner. So that's been pretty heavy on folks. And as it seems that mostly negative news tends to be talked about a lot of folks are also grieving everything that's been happening in Gaza and in Palestine and now in Lebanon. So that's been something that's been top of people's minds.
So when people come to you about their public safety concerns, violence, the interpersonal violence that you're talking about, like, what do you tell them you can do to make them feel safe, to make the community safe, from the legislature? Because obviously you're not in charge of the police, but what can you do for them from the legislature?
Yeah, what I usually mention is that a lot of the, violence that we see is correlated to poverty and instability in the home, especially for our young people. So I'm like, especially from a proactive level, we can be helping people have stability in their housing, whether it be something like a, more statewide, basic, like universal basic income, or other programs to help stabilize people's other expenses, such as right now we do have the weatherization program, but that's not reaching as many people at a rate that's really satisfactory. I was trying to check the statistics on this earlier, but I believe at the rate we're going, that's about, we'll get done in maybe like 50 years with the current amount of upgrades we need to do. And also letting folks know, outside of that proactive approach, we can also be using a lot more funding directly to community-based and culturally relevant care, as a lot of the de-escalation needed and a lot of what helps prevent crime, which when the MPD actually came to Elliott Park to talk to us about what was going on, they're like, a lot of it is community driven, and having people come together and have that funding for people to come together to find solutions for what we're seeing, because these are our neighbors. So
do people ever bring up the police? Do people like, you need to send the city more money to fund more police? Do people say that?
I have actually not heard that from a constituent yet, or from a neighbor yet. It's possible that I just happen to miss every house that is a solution people are talking about. But yeah.
Let's talk about transportation and transit. Your answer resonated with me in a couple of ways. You said you had recently, maybe it wasn't recent, but you've been to Chicago and you were admiring their transit system, how frequent it was. And you also talked about sidewalks, either lack of sidewalks or poorly maintained winter sidewalks. Mm-hmm. And, did you fix the feedback issue?
I think so.
It was really throwing me off. I had my own voice in my head. Thank you for turning that down. It made me feel like I was losing my mind.
All right. Let me know if it's still not working. I can probably switch to something else. For some reason, the port, I think, there's something going on with it. So.
Now I won't sound dumb. Obviously, Frank Hornstein, big transit booster. What would you like to make happen at the legislature with regard to transit?
Yeah, so what I am really excited to do that can be done sometimes I guess like exclusively, right, at the legislative level is transit between different municipalities as well as across different states. I am a big fan of high-speed rail. I am so excited for the train that's going up to Duluth, and also really looking at our freight and how to fix all of these ingrained, decades-old, almost century-old issues that we have baked into our mass transportation across the state. That's what I'm excited to do. And yeah, other than that, I am mostly just trying to be the best advocate, right, at the state level as possible, and using whatever soft power I have at the local level to ensure that more folks have that accessibility to both be on, right, the bus or the train or whatever transit option that we have available in the future here, as well as get to it, right, whether it be the sidewalks or other like micro transit between stations.
So on the sidewalks, I think of that as a very like local, municipal, city public works issue. And so I'm wondering, is there a way from the legislature to help cities address their poorly maintained sidewalks, make it so cities that don't have sidewalks build those sidewalks?
Yeah, so it is an ADA issue, right, with accessibility with our what we've been trying to do, what we can enforce, right, at the state level for folks with various abilities or disabilities, right, and is an issue across all of the different towns, right, and cities in Minnesota, not just Minneapolis, but we're also feeling it here. So I don't have a very specific bill or route in which I would like to take improving our sidewalks. However, I know that we definitely do have the jurisdiction to do something about this, at least from the ADA standpoint. So
this was the initial question, and people should go and listen to the candidate forum. I thought it was very good, and I enjoyed that it was just 2 candidates, because often these candidate forums, just an unwieldy number of candidates, and like that it was 2 candidates. It was only an hour long, so you can get through it. So the first question was about candidates' top priorities, and both candidates chose housing answers. It wasn't a housing question, but both candidates gave housing answers. And you said you'd eliminate barriers to cities adopting rent control. And then Katie said she would continue on work that she's been involved with to legalize more housing types. So things like legalizing apartments on commercial corridors. And she spoke to the 100,000 unit housing deficit in the state. So you gave different answers, but that doesn't necessarily mean you both disagree. And so I just wanted to ask you, like, do you disagree with the kind of things Katie was talking about in terms of, legalizing more housing types statewide?
no, I don't disagree with legalizing more housing types, as well as, seeing so much potential for our underutilized office spaces and such, as well as a strategy to help revitalize those areas, because you'll get more people there if there's more foot traffic, if more people live there, right? And I want to put a little note there that as we're working on this, we really have to make sure that we're not doing green gentrification, which usually happens when you let the old buildings, right, deteriorate and become unlivable, which is currently happening in Elliott Park, which is why I bring it up, and it's happening other places in 61A. And then essentially you're kicking those people out of their homes, and then you bulldoze everything and build a new one. That's not exactly sustainable, right? And is a huge issue for displacement of peoples and gentrification as well. So I don't disagree, and I anticipate, because we've seen this happen in other cities, could be used as an excuse to not be maintaining older buildings, especially older multifamily buildings and affordable housing, as we've seen with what happened with agate housing here in downtown. So yeah, I could talk a little bit more about that, but yeah.
No, that's good. So revitalizing Minneapolis. So when I talked to the DFL candidates months ago, they had been hearing a lot from people about uptown and downtown and basically just revitalizing the commercial corridors. And so what do you tell people when they ask you about that? What's your plan to help revitalize the commercial corridors? Because 61A includes downtown and uptown.
Yeah. So, I like to take it in two directions. My favorite one is putting more resources, education funding into worker cooperatives and other types of like grocery cooperatives, bike cooperatives, other things, so that we're having shared ownership models for these new businesses that we're wanting to come in, right? We've been also seeing a lot of issues with leases and having larger corporations, often from different states, be just kind of sitting on vacant buildings because they have plenty of others in their portfolio, and a certain website somewhere says that this place in Minneapolis has this amount of money, so that's how much I should charge. And definitely trying to keep that most of our ownership local and also accessible to people. So that's where I bring that whole cooperative angle to make that feasible for people to actually accomplish. Second is, if we are looking at universal basic income, if we are looking at single-payer universal health care, all of these things that help lower the cost of living, people will have money to spend when they go out, right, and into their neighborhood. Because that is one thing that when talking to some of my constituents, is that, I'd like to go buy things, but I don't, with what money? So that is something that I want to be very sensitive to, and also encouraging that if we give to our neighbors, we give back to each other. So yeah, and other than that, I know a lot of folks, especially business owners, have been worried about the changes when it comes to either like new transit coming in, fixing roads, whatnot. And I do believe that we have precedent for funding options, especially for locally owned small business, to be able to help them survive that transition. But we're seeing folks even who are outside of those types of stressors that keep people away from coming to a business, closing anyway, due to the general economy. So,
define the problem for public schools and how you would use your role at the legislature to strengthen public schools in Minneapolis and statewide.
Yes, so I think this is something that's been said multiple times. It still holds true that we are facing years, decades of underfunding, and we're trying to do remedial work on that. Also, I apologize if there's noises around. I am in a full house.
We all have lives happening all around us.
Aside from that, when we're looking at the students, who are leaving our public school districts, we have about 3 issues going on here. The first one would be essentially going back to affordability, is that some families have moved out of the district because they can't afford to live there anymore. And that's a very real thing that is happening, which I don't believe a lot of people are talking about. The second important thing is our, what I'm hearing, is our dual language programming. And a lot of folks have been talking about, especially when it comes to charter schools and other schools, that we're losing kids to those schools. Now, a lot of that is because we're not specifically prioritizing our dual language programming and not emphasizing that for families, often retaining your culture or being able to educate kids with the language that they do have that's appropriate for their grade level. For instance, if you have a 10-year-old and they speak Spanish, maybe their English level is at a kindergarten or first grade level, but all of their other skills are at the 5th grade level. So it doesn't really make that much sense if you're going to be holding them back entirely if they're not in a dual language program, right? And so they find it more important to find a place that will be able to educate their children than to stick at a public school where they don't even know if that's an option. And though we do have it as an option, I believe the wait times, especially for Spanish, is like, not that the wait times are super long, but like all of the classes are full. And I believe we've also lost educators to other schools and other districts because of cuts to funding specifically for that program. Some solutions that I see here is, I kind of want to pull up this guy. So different sources for funding. Here we have the levy question. I would like to ask people to vote yes on that. And we also have other sources in which schools are, I guess, not so much losing money, but we could do a better job as a public sector to help schools when it comes to like playgrounds. Can the park district help with that, right? They have specialists, they have funds and knowledge about how to like implement accessible, inclusive playgrounds, right? We also have building structure, right? How many of these buildings are, upgraded for efficiency? How many of them have solar? Because we know that solar energy is cheaper than coal and other options. And what are we looking at to decrease, right, the amount of stress that's put onto the school budget? So
we're going to do a bio question. So can you tell me about a time you saw a problem and helped lead an effort to address the problem?
Yeah, so do we have time for 2 answers to that?
Yeah.
All right. I'll do with something recently. So on 11th Avenue, there's an apartment building there that caught on fire. And it did result in 2 fatalities and everyone was displaced. So that is 1 street over from me. One of my neighbors literally texted me and was like, hey, I need you to come over here and do Spanish interpretation for us. So essentially at that point, I also corralled my own building, housemate, and we went over. And we were probably out there until 5 a.m. trying to coordinate resources and a preliminary contact sheet for all of the neighbors who were getting displaced at that moment. And also, one of the things which I believe is a leadership opportunity that just about anyone can take, right, is that talking to people, asking them what they need at that moment, a lot of them were like, I need to use a restroom, right? Like all the buildings are closed, it's like 2 a.m. And so essentially with a little bit of a walk, we had to do a detour because of course it was very, very on fire. There's a lot of smoke everywhere. Being able to take people back into my own apartment just so that they could use the restroom is hugely impactful to people at the time. After that, I was on the board of my neighborhood, the Elliott Park neighborhood board, and at this point I believe a lot of that work has been taken on by them, but originally it was 3 of us who started the initial outreach to make sure that people aren't being dropped between the Red Cross, which does very immediate, right, care, not really like stabilization type of work. And also trying to figure out what all the gaps are, right? Like helping people get new clothes, right? How do we get people like new dishes and paperwork, passports, all this stuff. And now for the second thing, which I think is a bit more related to the work I hope to be doing, is that I was on the board of a nonprofit and their employees were unionizing due to like workplace conflict and like a toxic work culture as it was described at the time. And so for myself, because there was so much pushback at the leadership level, I was the vice chair at the time, and unnecessarily so, right? These seem to be very legitimate issues. I took it upon myself to both catalog or not catalog, but note down all of the complaints, make a report, and make sure that these things weren't being ignored or really pushed off so that people couldn't deny that they didn't know about what was going on later, which they still did anyway. I did get reprimanded for all my efforts, but such is life as a rebel rouser, I suppose. And yeah, just kind of seeing that I spend a lot of time looking at case studies, especially around corporate negligence and other such issues where they're like, all the signs were there. Why didn't the board do anything? And I'm like, I don't want to be that person. So yeah, just kind of raising the alarm there. So
clarifying question for voters here. And so if you meet someone and like, I'm undecided, Katie, Toya, I don't know. What's different about you? Tell me why you are better for this job, more suited to it than the DFL candidate.
Yeah, I would say one of the glaring things would be that I'm in support of divestment from Israel. That's one thing that people very much care about, which is, I believe, not something that is currently supported by Katie, who is the DFL candidate. Also, when it comes to just like my own background, right, as a Latina, as a genderqueer person, as someone with disabilities, and a renter, I have more of that grounded, experienced viewpoint, perspective, that I do believe a lot of people are sick of, seeing detached, tone-deaf people in leadership that don't really reflect their own experiences or really know what's happening on the ground. And then from another standpoint, when it comes to our approaches to climate change specifically, so for all of the climate nerds out there, what I've seen is that a lot of my approach is very much based in environmental justice and climate justice, as well as shared ownership and inclusive financing, which I'm not seeing Katie, the current DFL candidate, champion. So, the other two things is that I think I have shown up, or I've been trying to show up more for both labor and farmers. I'm a Kansan, born and raised. I grew up right next to the Land Institute, so I have a lot of love for everybody who works in agriculture and vet med. And I also have been trying to be more supportive of all of the folks who are unionizing or asking for more respect and social and political power in their workplace. As I was out picketing with folks next to the Lofton Hotel and First Avenue earlier. So, maybe Katie's out here doing these things too. That's great. I just maybe would like to hear about it more. So.
Are you ready for the Green Party lightning round?
Oh,
I think
yeah.
You may be, aside from Cam Gordon, I don't know if I've had Green Party candidates on here. I'm trying to put you in uncomfortable positions here. Okay. So just prepare yourself. Who are you supporting for president this year?
Yeah, so I would say I'm kind of thinking about supporting third-party candidate, probably going to go with the Green Party, which makes a lot of sense. I, like many other voters, am pretty skeptical at the national level. I mostly work at a hyper-localist level when it comes to enacting tangible change. But there's a lot of doom, a lot of gloom. So.
We could do a whole episode on follow-up questions to this.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not going to.
Maybe next time, yeah.
The second question in the lightning round is: will you caucus with the DFL if you're elected to the House?
Yeah, if they'll accept me.
Okay.
I feel like I am I don't think it makes that much sense to be by myself, right?
Caucus of one.
Caucus of one. And if I am accepted, I believe that we have very similar, I hope, views on several different issues that I will be accepted in the DFL caucuses. So,
Lightning round over. Green Party lightning round is over. Recommendations. This is the last question. What do you enjoy? What are you having fun doing? What makes you happy that you think other people should take up?
I think people should consider playing Dungeons and Dragons. So I am a game master. I have played for a little bit now, and I guess since right before COVID. And role playing is really a great opportunity to exercise some of these skills, these interpersonal skills that we're talking about. So it can be a great time for what's called I am forgetting the word now, but fiction, right? Trying to imagine what do we want it to be like? Some issue that I'm having with folks is that they can't, or they have a hard time imagining, right? What is the pie in the sky? What is that you want, right? And folks are like, well, I'm not going to get it, so why would I even spend time imagining this? And that is part of the issue with generating hope, is regenerating our capacity to be able to playfully engage with speculative fiction, with what do we want? And so for me, role-playing is one of those avenues. Dungeons and Dragons is a very easy, a lot of people know how to play it. You can find folks to participate or play with you. And it's also something, or role-playing, what do we call it here? Some role-playing mechanics are what I also use when I facilitate group discussions to create a safe, playful space for us to be exploring different concepts, which might be difficult, right, to do in actuality, but we can start practicing now. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for that recommendation, Toya López, and thank you for joining me today for the grand reopening, what I'm calling the grand reopening of the Wedge Live podcast. What an honor for you to be here with me today.
No, I feel really honored, yeah.
And the election is when? November 5th?
Yes.
Okay.
And you can now vote early. You can send in that absentee ballot or in person at the government center during their open hours.
So everyone get out and vote. And thank you again, Toya.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and I'm glad that some of that feedback stuff got fixed early on, so.
Oh yeah, I sounded so much smarter, thanks to you. This has been the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. Thank you for listening.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.